Alright guys, so we are going to do the bottom of this page, and this is going to be learning the difference between what are shapes, what's the illusion of form, and what are actual forms. Okay, now when you are giving the illusion of form, you draw the shapes specific ways and then you use your shading techniques in order to give the illusion that it has shadows and taking up three-dimensional space. But again, what we are about to do is the illusion of form. Okay, so if you start off with the basic shapes that we learned on the previous page, okay, this one was called a square. And when you are turning a square into a three-dimensional form, it is now known as a cube. So next to this letter A here, I want you to write the word cube. And I've already taken the liberty of drawing the different shapes and stuff for you, so that step is done. So I'm really just going to be teaching you guys how to shade these properly. Okay, so again, this is a shape. We are going to shade this to give the illusion of form, but this little thing right here is an actual form. Because if you remember from our definition, forms take up 3D space. And it's stuff that I can pick up, I can look at, and I can turn in all directions to see it. So again, this is a form. Okay. Now, the first thing you have to do after you've drawn your shape is figure out where your light source is going to come from. The light source I've already provided for you. That's what this little sun over here in the corner is going to be. So we are going to look at this and we are going to pretend. Now, you don't have to draw these lines if you don't want to, but if you are drawing if the sun rays are coming out and they're hitting our cube like this, okay, that means the area that is closest to the light source is going to be the lightest, and then the areas that are the darkest are going to be the areas of shadow that are the farthest away from our light source. Okay? Now, the good news is cubes are really easy to shade because you just shade in the whole side of the cube. So, if we pretend our sunlight is coming towards our cube like this, the first side that it is going to hit is going to be this one. Okay? So, using your drawing pencil or whatever pencil you have, I want you to very, very lightly go in and shade this side, because we do want to look like it has a little bit of color to it. Okay? So again, I'm just using very, very light pressure, and I'm just going to give this color or this side a little hint of color, because that's going to be my lightest side, because again, that is where my light source hits my cube first. Okay? Once I have that side shaded in, again, I go here, my light source comes here, hits here first, and would probably hit this side second. So that's going to be like a medium. Okay? So again, I'm going to use my pencil, and I'm going to shade that whole side in, and I'm just going to give kind of like normal pressure, just enough in order to make sure that it's darker than the area that I did here. Okay? And you want to make sure that you color the whole area in, so don't leave any white areas. Get all the way up to those edges. And then I did a tiny little whoops right here where I did color out the lines, but that's okay, because the good thing about pencil is they have erasers. So if you ever accidentally color or shade out of the lines, just go back and kind of fix it and clean them up. That's good craftsmanship, remember? Alright, and then so again, going back to my light source, hits here first, hits here second. So then we have our last side where the sunlight is going to hit last, because that's the side that is farthest away from my light source. So then I'm going to use heavy pressure, and I'm going to color in this side with heavy pressure. Just like this. Okay. So now, as you can see, my box now has shading from lightest, medium to darkest sides. Okay. And then if we want to add in what's called a cast shadow, meaning it's the shadow that the shape is casting on the surface that it's sitting on. The cast shadow always is directed away from the light source. So it's always on the opposite side of the light source, which we've already figured out is over here. And so I'm going to draw my shadow going out this way. And usually the shadow is pretty dark, like that. And again, the shadow is going away from my light source. So it starts on the, touches the object that is making it, and then works its way away from the light source. Okay? And that is how you shade a cube. Okay? The next one we have, the shape is called a rectangle, and I have two options here for you. Okay, the first option is very, very similar to the cube, and this one we are going to call a box. So I'm going to write box right here. And again, this is what the actual form looks like. Okay, very similar to the cube, except for it's a little longer to give more of the rectangular shape. And it's shaded very similar. But I did this on purpose, okay? So where now, you see where we had this cube was facing towards the sunlight, and now we have this one, which again, very similar shape, but I have the front of it facing away from our light source, okay? Now, so we're going to shade this one very similar to this, but it's going to be different sides being the light, medium, dark area. And we're going to pretend that this one right here isn't there, so we don't have to worry about this one making shadows or blocking the light. We're just going to pretend this one's not here. And my light source is coming towards that box, you know, like this. So, again, if we have our light source and it's traveling towards our box, okay, it hits this side first. So same thing that we did here. I'm going to use very light pressure just to kind of give a little bit of a hint of color on that side. Again, if you color out of the lines a little bit on accident, clean it up. Once you get that side, again, do it again. Light source hits here second, so that's going to be my medium. And then the last side that we haven't done is going to be my darkest area, which in this case ends up being the face. So if you see how, again, the cube and the box are very similar in their shape, but depending on how you draw them, whether the front is facing towards the light source or the front is facing away, will have a completely different effect on which sides get the shadow. Okay. Okay. So then, again, the last step then is to put in that cast shadow. Okay, so again, has to touch where the bottom is and then work itself away from the light source. So I'm going to go here, make it dark, and I'm going to have it kind of working its way out this way. So that is my cast shadow. Now, the other way that rectangles can be made into 3D objects is something like this, which is called a cylinder. Okay, a cylinder. And the reason why this is considered to be a 3D version of a rectangle is if you look, so this is my little cylinder, and if you look at it from the side, you can see that if you just hold it directly on the side, you can see that it gets kind of that very boxy kind of a look. Okay, and usually cylinders are very long and round, kind of like a Pringles can. So cylinders are usually considered the 3D version of rectangles. Now, when it comes to shading in anything that has like kind of a round nature to it, you have to take that into consideration when you are shading. Okay? When you have flat surfaces like the cube and the box, you can just kind of color in the whole side. But again, when you do something that is rounded, You have to make sure that the shadow follows the natural curve of your rounded objects. So, again, light source is here, coming towards our cylinder like this. So the area that is farthest away from it will get the darkest, and then as that our shadow is working its way around the cylinder, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. So how you do that is, I always like to start with the dark when I do rounded objects. So I will start here. This is my dark, so I use my heavy pressure, and then as I'm slowly working my way around the edge, I gradually kind of lighten up my pressure. And you see how now I have like this nice dark coloring here, and it has a gradual change into the light. Okay, so I have my shadow working my way into my highlight. Okay, and by doing that, it gets kind of like that rounded kind of a feel. And then I have to do the top of the cylinder, which will be the same thing. It'll be dark over here, and then as it works my way towards that light source, it gets a little lighter. Okay, so again, you can see I have my lightest points closest to my light source, and my darkest points farthest away from my light source. Okay, but now we've taken into consideration the round nature of a cylinder. Now when I do the cast shadow, again, my shadow is farthest away over here, and I'm going to kind of put my shadow like this, kind of work my shadow away from my light source. Okay. Next, the shape that we have is a triangle, and when you take a triangle and you make it into kind of a 3D thing, again, you can get two options. We're only going to shade the one option, and so we have what's called a cone. So that's the option that we're going to have. But then the other option you could do is also something like this, where you have more of a squared off triangle. This is called a pyramid, but we're only going to work on shading the cone. Okay, so two ways to make a triangle three-dimensional. You can have it rounded, make a cone, or keep it very geometric and have what's called a pyramid. But both of those could work. We're going to focus in on shading in the cone. So next to the letter C, you can write the word cone. And again, we got to take into consideration that our light source is coming down like this, hitting here. So my light area is going to be here. My dark area is going to be down here. And again, it's a rounded type of a shape or type of a form. So we have to kind of do kind of the same thing that we did with the cylinder, where it's going to be kind of a gradual change. So you have to really practice going from heavy pressure to light pressure in kind of one nice smooth transition. So again, I like to start with my darks. The more times you do this, you'll figure out what you're comfortable with. Okay, so we're going to have dark area here, and then as I work my way across that rounded area, I get lighter and lighter, and I'm going to darken this a little bit more because I feel like it just needs a little bit more contrast. Okay. So again, area farthest away will be your darkest, and then as you work your way across, it gets lighter and lighter. If you ever accidentally go too far like this and you end up shading it all kind of very similar and you don't have that light area anymore called a highlight, you can always come back with your eraser and put that highlight back in. Okay. So again, you just kind of play around with shading in your shadows, making them darker, and then again, if you need to come back, you can come back and erase a little bit to put a little bit more of those highlights back in if you need them. So there is my cone, and then again, to do that last step, to do a cast shadow, my farthest way is here, working my way away from my light source, just like that. So notice how my cast shadows so far, you know, they're all going in different directions, so because of where they are. So this one kind of works its way These ones do. This one's going a little farther down. My next one will be a little farther down. So again, you play around